Okay. So, Dave, you are calling user number what?
I didn't get a user number.
Okay, because there's 3 call-in numbers. We got Tim and Catherine. You know,
Yeah, so
Gary's
I just discovered something new about my home computer. It does not support WebEx.
That's not good.
No. Or the current version of the OS does not support the WebEx app.
So Alvin's not on yet, right?
Right, and that's our chair. And I haven't heard George yet.
So if you joined recently, can you please give your name?
Well, let's do another quick roll call. We've got Director Hoffman, Stephanie Locke.
Yes.
Dave Stolt. And members of the public.
Catherine is on. And then there's a couple other people. I don't know who they are.
Ian Crooks.
Ah, hi, Ian.
Great. Okay. So we're waiting on Alvin and George, or we don't have a quorum.
Hey,
Hi,
this
Sarah.
is Alvin. Can you hear me?
Hi, Alvin.
Oh, yeah,
Hello.
there we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, there are no visuals other than the board packet. So if you don't have access to a screen right now, you're not going to miss anything if you do have the packet. And I guess at this point, we're just waiting on George. Let me send him a text and see what's going on.
Okay, so this WebEx, is it working or not working?
It's working.
Okay, I'm trying to connect to it.
Wait for that. Did you have trouble?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think right now we are waiting for George Riley.
All right.
You're on? Alvin, I believe we got our whole committee here.
Okay, call the meeting to order. A quick roll call.
So we have Alvin, you're present, obviously. Gary is present, and George, you are present, correct?
Okay. I
And
can't
Dave
hear
Laredo
them.
is on the phone.
Dave
Okay,
Loretta's
I
on
heard
the phone.
Dave.
Yeah.
Dave Stoltz on the phone. Is George on via computer with a microphone?
George?
So I think George is hearing the computer connected folks, but not the phone connected folks.
Yeah, I'm not hearing George at all, Dave.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Could we contact him and tell him to go to the phone?
Stephanie, didn't you have some communication with George? So I suspect we're going to have to do more practice and come up with a way, and I've now started talking to people using Zoom, which seems to be the current darling, the current favorite, and they're still having some issues with identifying participants and people who are phone only versus computer with camera. But I did the legislative committee one from the office where we don't have any cameras in the system and no microphones in the monitor. I'm doing this one from home, and I found out my OS doesn't support the current version of WebEx, so I'm sure we're going to have a few more connectivity issues before we solve this thing.
Yeah, I listened to the Monterey One Water meeting on Monday, and they was using Zoom, and it sounded like it was pretty good. Tonight, Seaside is using Zoom, so I'm going to try to time in on that and see how it works.
Right, that's a Seaside Monterey One Water meeting too. So, yeah.
Now, I've heard that Zoom's got some privacy issues and dealing with not securing the data from using their system.
Yep, you're spot on. And Santa Cruz County just prohibited any of its divisions from using Zoom for meetings at this point. So, yep, just when you think you got it figured out. So, Stephanie, are you having any communication at all with George via computer?
No, not at all.
Okay. I'm going to drop off. I'm going to call George, and then I will come back on.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience, everybody.
Yeah, no problem. Seems like I can't even get connected to this WebEx.
Yeah, so I just talked to George, or it left a message. It rolled straight over to voicemail, so I don't know what his situation is.
Yeah, I fooled around for 10 minutes trying to get it on the WebEx, and then I just bailed and called in.
Yes, at least you called in. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, we can proceed. We've got a quorum. We've got some business to consider. So, Stephanie, you want to run this? You're the keeper of the controls, right?
Yeah, hang on just a second. Keeper of the controls has to figure out how to use her controls here.
Well, Alvin, as chair, he's got a packet in front of him, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do we have any public comment on here? Any of the public want to speak? Action item. Public comment will be received. Consider adoption of March 5th, 2020 committee meeting minutes. Gary, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay. Okay.
I'll make a motion.
You make the motion, I'll second it. All in
Yeah, I'll make a
favor, say
motion
aye.
to. Aye.
Okay. Aye. Okay. Going to item number 2. Discuss request from the City of Monterey reallocation for 2000 and 2020 2600 Garden Road, Monterey.
Yeah, so
Stephanie,
this
that's
item,
yours.
no, this is Dave's. So this item, as you recall, at our last Water Demand Committee meeting, we discussed making a temporary allocation or loan from the district's reserve so that they could add approximately 66 100% affordable units to an already planned 2 building construction at 2000 and 2600 Garden Road. Those would be 1/4, or I'm sorry. Andy, are you on this call? Well, Stephanie, do you remember, is it 1 and 4?
She
Or is it
is on the call.
Okay. And George just texted me yes, so I guess he's going to try to call in, or he's on. And because we received the letter the evening before the committee meeting, and then kind of reread it after the direction of the committee, it's clear that the state board is kind of following through on its desire not to be seen as a paper tiger when it comes to enforcement. So our original plan had been, once we received all of the technical advisory committee statements of interest for water, for housing, so all 6 city jurisdictions and the unincorporated county, then we would have some measure of what the need might be for the next 3 to 4 years. Then we would take some housing advocates from the area, head up to Sacramento, have a meeting with the State Water Board, and say, all right, here's our conundrum. We need housing. We're at least 3 years away from the desal plant or whatever the permanent water supply is going to be. What can you do to work with us so that enforcement on the cease and desist order remains in place, but we've got the freedom to move forward to get some housing stock? Obviously, with the shelter in place, we're not going to be able to have that meeting. Obviously, we don't have all of the feedback back from the cities. And then we received that letter on March 4th, or the email on March 4th, which, in my opinion, really muddies the situation until we're able to have that meeting with the state and try to create some resolution. I know that the city of Monterey has been proactive in talking to state housing folks and is kind of working towards balancing the state housing allocation desires versus State Water Board, that may yield some fruit before we're able to get together with the state. But anyway, the idea of front loading or front lending from the district reserve is just too clouded at this time, in my opinion. And so I think that the committee should not recommend this allocation to the board and just let it sit. If the city is able to wait it out a little longer, 4 to 6 weeks, and see where we go, then we can revisit it at that time. But staff recommendations to not make a recommendation to our board to use the district reserve.
This is Andy. I am here. If you had any questions.
Great. Yeah, what was the answer? Are you a 25% set aside city?
20% set aside and
and that's why Eric Miller only built 4 units on Hoffman. Yep, understood.
project would end up being 50%.
Yeah. Okay, I'll come back to you. Sorry about that.
The applicant is able to wait that 8-week period if you were to continue this rather than make a decision today.
Well, that's helpful. So, Mr. Chair, the recommendation at this point to not take any action and then to try to do some interaction with the State Water Board and the housing folks at the state level. That's we seem to be able to do that.
Okay, Gary, do you have any questions?
No, I was going to make a motion, Alvin, if it's time for that.
Okay, let me ask a question. Dave, do this deny us from giving that 9-acre fee out to anybody?
No, it still remains at your discretion. We talked to some of the cities about, whether there's, call it shovel-ready projects that might require water, and there was really not much response. So it is kind of just these 2 projects that are asking. The district in the past, and when I say past, meaning the way past, has done allocations where it just said, all right, fine, we're taking all the water we have control over, and we're just going to equally distribute it to the remaining, to the jurisdictions, whether you need it or want it or not. The previous board didn't like that idea. They said, let's hold our district reserve and use our discretion. They didn't even want to define what kind of public benefit projects might qualify. They just said, let's wait and see what the needs are. And let me just give you an example of where this could come into play. The Presidio of Monterey has had 2 water credits. One is long since expired and the other one's about to expire. And, they harbor a notion to build some teaching facilities and some other things, and they keep wanting us to extend the credits. Well, it's kind of hard to do that for one entity and not the others. And we've always contemplated, well, if the military should come to us and say, oh, we've got this burning need, our credits have expired, that we would do something similar to what we did with CHOMP back in the 90s, which is create an additional allocation. Well, the district reserve also serves that same purpose. So like if there was a base realignment and closure round and CHOMP says, hey, our neck is on the cutting block unless we had 4 acre feet to do this, that, and the other thing. Well, that's another good example of the board using its discretion. So nothing prevents you from making other choices with that 9 acre feet going forward, or revisiting this choice in 4 to 8 weeks.
Okay. So any water that we do get, if we use credit, do we have to talk to the state about it?
No, and this is where things have gotten really muddied. And honestly, it's part of the problem between the state's CDO on Cal-Am as a water rights user on the river, and our 40-year-old permitting process, where under condition 2 of the cease and desist order, the state has said if there, A, no new service connections, but B, at an existing service address or an existing service connection, no increase in use is allowed due to a change in zoning or use. Since 2013, we've been trying to define what that really means, and there's a disconnect because our permitting process is a look at the project pre-construction, look at the project post-construction. If the capacity for water use is going to go up on the site, then it's up to the permit applicant to show us where that water is going to come from. And that water either comes from an allocation from a city, because the cities had these jurisdictional allocations, or it comes from a on-site credit where we've documented the previous use on a site. Let's say a building or a site's gone into decline, current use is down, but a building owner or property owner always has the right to restore that use. And so that on-site documented use can be restored, or an entitlement like the Pebble Beach entitlement, the Malpaso entitlement, where a pocket of water was created and basically was sold to property owners, and it was separate from the Cal-Am water supply projects. And then the fourth is credits that the property owner has gotten from either permanent abandonment of Cal-Am use, due to an appliance change or something, or a transfer of credit. And of those 4 different sources of water, we are not in agreement with the state in their view how both a site is defined. Our definition is different than what they would like to see. And they disagree with the jurisdictional allocations and certain other entitlements. They recognize some entitlements, but not others. And so it's gone on and on and on. We've never come to agreement. The only thing that the state has provided firm guidance on at this point is a change in use for them is if it was residential and goes to commercial, or was commercial and goes to residential, then they need to look at it further. And that's kind of what's going on here in this setting, is that the Garden Road sites were commercial going to residential. There was a change in zoning. That doesn't mean they couldn't do it. And in fact, the proposed projects would be within the envelope of the previous water use. And so even though there's no permanent advice from the state, the last draft that they had said, hey, we'll rely on the district's factors from Table 2 to determine whether there's an increase in use. So the way the city has currently calculated how many units they can put on those 2 sites is based on the use of the Table 2 factors. So their pre-project use and their post-project use would be the same. But if we found more water and made it available, that's where these additional units would come from. And that's the reason they sent the letter saying, well, that would obviously be an increase in use over the factors. And so it's up to us, the State Water Board, to remind you that we need to enforce if that's an obvious increase in water use. And that's why the 31 additional units at 2,000 and 35 additional units at 2,600 Garden Road would come under scrutiny.
Okay. Gary, you were going to make a motion?
Yeah, I was, and then to have discussion. The motion I was going to make is that committee defers action on this request until such time that staff and the water board can meet and come to some accommodation regarding the district's use of the reserve.
Okay. You put a time limit on it? Like,
Well, the time limit is associated with the ability to get together with the water board. I mean, that's kind of an open-ended thing.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I was just going to say, I think Director Hoffman, also the time limit is going to be the patience of the developer. You know, if they say, hey, look, you know, we can't wait any longer, we need to mobilize, then they need to mobilize on
Okay.
a smaller project.
So Dave, when is a good time to bring this back? If we bring it back, you were talking about 8 weeks?
We're gonna see what we can do. As I said, the city has opened a line of communication directly with the state housing people, and
Mm-hmm.
that may lead to a direct line of communication with the state water board. If that lights a fire, then it could be sooner. If it doesn't lead anywhere, then, you know, it could be later. So we could just keep this as an open item, that if it looks like we need to bring it back in April, we can bring it back in April. Otherwise, it'll be May.
Okay, well, this is April. I say bring it back in May and see where we're at. So,
Right.
Is that okay with you, Gary?
Yeah, I'm not, whatever time frame works, recognizing the just unprecedented situation that we're in. Yeah, I've got no heartburn with that.
Okay. Did we get George on or anything?
So George sent me a text
Dave?
saying yes.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to delay this until next month, say aye. Aye. Okay.
Hey,
Motion
Stephanie,
pa-
if you're using your microphone, can you ask if George is using his microphone?
Well, George should be able to hear us if he is.
Okay.
Well, we took a vote on something, so the vote passed. So,
Yep.
okay, what's the next item? Is consider recommendation to the board on the first reading of ordinance number 185, amending District Rule 24 to allow special fixture units accounting for a second bathroom in existing dwelling units and to permanent adopt sub-meter requirements and exemption for accessory dwelling units. Hey, who got that?
Yeah, this is my item. Back in January, the Water Demand Committee reviewed a concept ordinance that would expand the second bathroom protocol, which allows someone with less than 2 full bathrooms to add whatever water fixtures to equal 2 bathrooms for convenience in their homes. Currently, it is restricted only to single-family dwellings on single-family residential sites that were constructed prior to adoption of the ordinance in 2001. So this ordinance would expand the second bathroom protocol to all dwelling units that existed in 2001, but it would expand it so that it was not restricted only to single-family dwellings on single-family residential sites. And in January, the Water Demand Committee recommended that it be restricted to properties that have less than 4 dwelling units. So it would not apply to an apartment complex, but it could potentially apply to a triplex or duplex. And essentially does is allow, so it's kind of been a stopping point with the accessory dwelling units where we've seen a number of properties that had used the second bathroom protocol and now are restricted to only 2 bathrooms, but they want to add an ADU on the property. And they cannot do that because they have to permit that second bathroom before they can add an ADU. So this would allow them to keep the second bathroom protocol in the main house. And if the city has water to give them for an ADU, they would be able to build an ADU on the site. If somebody takes advantage of the second bathroom protocol, they still have to put that second bathroom within an existing dwelling unit. And it can't be used to put a second bathroom in a new accessory dwelling unit. So that was the other thing we were trying to make clear in this ordinance. Right now, a site is restricted if they take advantage of this program to no more than 2 bathrooms. And so this would allow a bathroom to be added in an ADU if there was additional water from an allocation. And then finally, the other thing this ordinance does is last August, the board adopted ordinance 154, I believe, or 184. And that ordinance was adopted with urgency, which means it only has a 1-year lifespan. It provided that accessory dwelling units that are constructed within an existing structure do not have to submeter. And it also allowed permanent submetering if you built a new detached ADU, so that you wouldn't have to put a CalAm meter in when the cease and desist order is lifted. And so this ordinance would actually put that into our rules and regulations so it does not expire. A negative declaration is proposed for the ordinance, and an initial study was filed with the county recorder on March 16th. That comment period actually ends at the end of this week, and so next Monday I'll be looking to see if there are any comments. At this point, we have not received any comments. So what the recommendation is that the Water Demand Committee recommend adoption of Ordinance 185 to the board. It goes for first reading at the April meeting. It would go to second reading at the May meeting and then be effective 30 days later. If you have any questions.
Okay. Gary, you have any questions?
Yes, I do. So, Stephanie, is the term second bathroom defined? And the reason why I ask that is if somebody, I'm assuming this is taking a half bath, which is a toilet and a sink, and then allowing an ability to take a shower or a bath. And so as I read this, the CEQA finding indicates that of no significant impact based on the presumption that adding a shower or a tub would not result in additional use. And so my question is, in my view, adding a bathtub or a jacuzzi tub would in fact have greater use versus a shower stall.
So, and Gary, so the answer to your question is bathroom is a defined term in Rule 11. It essentially is a toilet, usually 1 or 2 sinks, and either a bathtub and or a shower. And the finding, so this ordinance was adopted in 2001, and since 2001, the district has allowed whatever water fixtures are needed to create a second bathroom in a home for convenience. And the CEQA finding was that by adding whatever water fixtures are needed, if you have 1 bathroom, to put in all of the water fixtures for a second bathroom would not increase water use at the home, or if it increased water use, it was de novo, I mean, tiny small amount, but was primarily for convenience, and that there would not be a significant increase in water use. And that premise has not changed.
So somebody needs to put on mute, I think. I'm getting a lot of background.
Yeah, somebody having problems.
That's me, George. I just turned it off.
Oh, we got George Raleigh on?
Yeah, so
Thanks,
that's,
Alex.
so that's feedback between your computer microphone and the phone itself, George. Can you turn your computer microphone off?
I turned the phone off.
But we
Okay.
hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Good. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we're going to rethink this. There's going to be a new virtual meeting session between our manager's leadership team because we're going to have to iron out some wrinkles here.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Okay,
So my
Yeah,
other
no,
question, Stephanie,
Actually, Director Hoffman, the point I wanted to make too is upscaling
Okay.
to a jacuzzi tub is probably not possible here because we do have a break point between, Stephanie, was it 50 gallons or higher?
Yes, 55.
55. So you wouldn't be able to do a big old jacuzzi tub in this case.
No, but you could do either a tub or a shower, not both.
Right.
so with that understanding, Stephanie, when you say a tub or a shower, like in my home, and I think most homes, you have a spout for the tub and also a shower head that you can switch between.
Mhm.
And you're not saying that one versus the other, are you?
No. Yeah, you could have a combination tub shower, of course.
So my next question is with regard to the 4 units aspect of it, and it references apartments only. Is there, it came to mind for me, and again, my apologies that I didn't come on the committee till after the initial discussion in January. But why condominiums were not considered an issue in addition to apartments?
Good question. The discussion was primarily related to apartment complexes, and I think a condominium under the current ordinance would be able to add a second bathroom if they had the space to do it. But again, you're restricted in how much space you have to actually be able to put a second bathroom in.
Yeah, and so the discussion of the committee was, I don't want to call it social engineering, but it was kind of on that order. You know, the idea is it's a convenience. If your family isn't in a single family home, but it's in a condo, you're just looking for an alternate spot to schedule your bath or your shower. But the same number of people aren't going to use more showers, more baths. At the time, it was discussed that, well, if you do it for apartments, then you're going to end up facilitating more people in the apartment and you're actually going to increase use. It's not just merely a convenience at that point. And so it did evolve from a bunch of discussion about how units would get utilized when you're the owner occupant versus a tenant in a rental situation. And I can't tell you that there's any science behind any of that.
Okay, no, that kind of makes sense to me. You're right, because the rental unit, there is, the number of occupants is not established, or it could be infinite.
Yeah.
Those are the only questions I had, Chair.
All right, thank you, Gary. George, you have anything?
No, I don't have any questions, but I've lost the visual, so I'm trying to reconnect. Can you still hear me?
We can hear
Yeah,
you
I
and you
can
keep
still hear
popping
you.
in and out.
All right.
Yeah, the
They
visuals,
said it was no,
yeah, Director Riley, the visuals are only the packet. We don't have any other prepared PowerPoints or other materials. So there's no loss there. In the alternative, you could go to the district's website, pull down on who we are, go to committees, and then pull up the agenda from the bottom of that committee's page from the Water Demand Committee. But
If you can hear me, I'll just chime in as I can get the floor, but I'll make myself known.
okay. Great.
okay, Stephanie, inline meter. What are we talking about when we talk about inline meter?
First of all, an inline meter is only required for a new accessory dwelling unit that is detached from the house. And it is a device that is under $200 that goes in the water line that goes from the house to the new accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, so if the jurisdiction have water, they build an accessory unit, they put that inline meter in, they don't have to go through CalAm or anything?
No, it doesn't go through CalAm at all.
Okay, so I'm saying at my house, if I have room to put an accessory unit in, I just get a device and connect it off my water meter.
It would connect to your house water line.
Okay. But are they allowed to put a bathroom in that ADU?
If there's water from the jurisdiction's allocation or an entitlement or credit on site.
Okay. Just quickly going back to the to the last thing we just did, I think it was. In essence, somebody in Delray Oaks put an accessory unit up, but they don't have the water. Could they still, in Delray Oaks, where they don't have the water, put an accessory unit up?
No, they would not be able to.
So if we gave them an acre feet of water, they would have water to put an accessory unit up, right?
If they had water in an allocation or entitlement, they would be able to distribute that water.
Okay, like the 9 acre
so-
feet the 9 acre feet
Exactly.
we have in reserve. The 9 acre feet that we have in reserve, could we give that out to jurisdictions to let them put up ADUs?
Yes. And in fact, an acre foot in Delray Oaks would probably enable anywhere from 10 to 12 ADUs.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's all the questions I got. You just answered a big one for me on a couple of issues. All right, thank you. George, you have any questions?
No, I had one question.
Okay. Okay. Do we have a motion on this to move it to the 20th meeting? Is everything go good?
George, that's your computer asking you to turn off your microphone.
And Alvin, you do need to have your votes by roll call, please.
Okay, yeah. Roll call vote. Well, first, did we get a motion?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
getting in my car to drive over to George's house to turn off his microphone.
Okay, roll call vote. We have a motion to move this to the,
This goes to the board for first reading at the April 20th meeting, and the committee should recommend that it move forward with approval.
okay. So I'm just waiting for a motion out there, or I'll make that motion that we'll move this to the April 20th meeting for the first reading.
I'll second.
I think somebody seconded it.
Gotcha, George.
Okay. Okay, roll call vote.
All right. Director Riley. Okay.
Sorry, that's a yes with all the background noise.
Okay, thank you, George. Director Hoffman?
I guess George said
He did.
yes.
So
'Cause
sorry.
I'm not hearing anything but a bunch of really odd sounds. Yeah. I didn't hear the motion, but I'm assuming it's moving this to the first reading to the board. Is that correct, Stephanie?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My vote is aye.
Thank you. And Chair Edwards.
Yes.
All right, passes. Thank you very much.
Director
All right.
Riley, if you do some social distancing from your computer, that may decrease the feedback that we're getting when you take your phone off of mute. But this is a known problem with several of the GoToMeeting style tools, the WebEx tools, where if you use the dial-in number and your computer microphone, you get various forms of feedback. This is one of the most interesting forms of feedback I've ever heard, but it's that's what's going on.
I'm far removed. Sorry.
Okay, we're ready to move on now.
Does anybody remember Lost in Space or Rod Serling's thing?
It's straight out of there, absolutely. And I don't know if it's the sound of a phaser gun or if it's just the twisted time warp that you walk through to the other side.
George is muted at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to move on to item number 4.
Okay, not much to see here. Go ahead. Do you want me to move on,
Yes,
Director Evans?
yes.
Okay.
Item number 4, please.
Yeah, so what you see here, so, after we did the update after the close of the water year to the September 2019 report, we were requested to send it to the city managers, which we did. 3 city managers responded. The Monterey Bay Area Defense Council responded. The Presidio of Monterey responded. They had some interesting and well-founded concerns. But then the city managers issued a second letter saying, hey, in general, here's what we would like you to do. Have the water master look at it, have the state water board look at it, consider a third-party review that we, the city managers, would undertake. At the time, there was also in January a third-party consultant to California American Water, Hazen and Sawyer, issued a report. We, meaning staff and the board, discussed whether it was worth doing any more work on this or not. I was given direction to respond to the Hazen and Sawyer report, which I did and distributed only to the the distribution list that initially received that report, and to the attorney at the State Water Board who had expressed an interest in it. That was done shortly after March 6th. Then on March 13th, I finalized the report, including a third economic forecast where we took not just the AMBAG economic forecast, but we assumed that all the hotels currently on the books, the new ones that were constructed, that the tourists that would stay in them would dine out and use restaurant seats, that 1,000 new students could show up at Naval Coast Graduate School or any of the other schools for 9 months of the year, and layered that in and basically closed it out and said no more changes, no more modifications. Here it is. However, we took a lot of the material that had been cited in the Hazen and Sawyer report and rebutted and moved it into appendices so that this report is not a series of 1-page or 5-page memoranda sitting all over the place. It's all in one report. There was not very much new material added, except the appendices had been, as I mentioned, they were elsewhere. But we had included a lot of that material in the rebuttal to Hazen and Sawyer. So this report is out there at the direction of the chair. My understanding is you did not want to bring it to the board for adoption or discussion until we can have an in-person board meeting where the public can better access the communication tools needed. And so that would be no earlier than May, but it could be even later. And that is the recommendation that, that the committee would recommend it to the board for adoption at the first or earliest in-person board meeting.
Okay, Gary, you have any questions?
Yeah, my question, Dave, is using the term adoption, and I think it's important to clarify what the intent of that use of that word is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last discussion we had is what are the nuances between adoption, approval, and acceptance. And I do think they mean different things to different people in different forums. Based on my discussion with a few board members was the problem with the report in September was the board never adopted it, which created some sort of stigma. So that's the recommendation here. But if it does go to the board and board discussion says differently, that you'd use a different term of art, I'm okay with that. But this was the recommendation.
George, are you on the line? You have any comments? Hey, George, you shut your computer off. Hello?
George needs to go into a cone of silence or something.
Yeah. Oh, that's a Get Smart reference. Very good. Very good. Yeah, George, I would suggest just dropping out of the WebEx because we are just working off the packet at this point.
All right, I'm going to drop out, but I'm going to sign in on the phone. So it'll be a few minutes.
Well, I can hear you now.
We hear you perfectly now.
Oh, I don't know what happened.
Okay, well, we better get to this. Do you have any questions on the report?
I had one.
Item number 4.
Can you hear me? Am I on?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had one request, one question from the chart at the end of the package. Dave, I wonder if you can just explain that numbered date question that I raised with you for the sake of the committee.
Okay, so you're looking at the maximum day and peak hour discussion, right?
Yes.
So it's,
What page is that?
Yeah, so
It's
it
page
is-
71.
Okay.
Very good.
The question I raised is under, well, is anybody there?
Yeah, we're here.
So
Okay, it's item number A. And the 10-year period was 2014 to 2023. Since we haven't hit 2023 yet, I'm curious how the demand number works out when we haven't hit 2023 yet.
right, that's a very good point, a realistic question too. In previous discussion and actually in some testimony by the company, the 10-year period was kind of, well, let me back up. So the law is you look back 10 years and your water supply needs to be able to meet the maximum daily demand, or the MDD, of that 10-year period. And so when looking at a new water supply that's being added, one of the things that water planners do is say, well, what year is it coming online? Then let's look back a 10-year period from that date forward and demonstrate that it's sufficient. In our case on the Monterey Peninsula, the maximum month and the maximum day have been in decline. And so what we did here was say, and it would be, yes, it would be a different answer if we were to say, for planning purposes today, let's look back 10 years. But because with each passing year, the maximum month, which is usually July or August, has been going down. Basically, we've been shaving the peak. What we did here was we said, let's do a 10-year look back from the year that it's expected to go in service. And that's not an unusual planning approach. And so in this case, the max month, as if it's going into service in 2023, was actually in August 2014. But to your point, you don't know for sure that 2020, 2021, 2022 aren't going to be higher than 2014. But the trend analysis really does show that it's highly unlikely that you would have a max month higher than 2014.
Well, then I understand too that, and it's in your report, that the Cal-Am is also projecting lower water usage, and there are no peak month anomalies in their own projections for the future, for their own desal project.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm okay with that.
If you were to look at their rate case filing, and this is an issue that we always have, which is the goal is to have a water supply that meets demand, and demand means year-round. But the law is very concerned with two things, and the two pieces of the law that really matter about the fragility or sensitivity of a system is, can you meet peak hourly demands for an extended period of time? Can you meet peak day demands? So it's like if Car Week comes in August, hey, it's great if you've got a system that can meet an average annual demand of 10,000 acre-feet per year. That's really good. But if you can't meet the peak, and especially on what's called firm basis, which is you take your largest well offline in this case, then you're a system at risk, and it's a public safety issue because it's, you know, your goal is to be able to deliver water, you know, safe, affordable, reliable water supply. So the whole reason you gross up by, you know, a 1.5 peaking factor, which you seldom, if ever, hit, is to say, well, what if it happens? Can you do it? And so, you know, that's what's going on here, which is trying to show that the resources you have at hand are sufficient. Now, are they sufficient today? No. I mean, there's 4 new wells that are in the supplemental EIR for Pure Water Monterey expansion, a couple of which are intended to be redundant and not pressed into service on a regular basis. But for peak day calculations, or max day, you can assume that all 4 of those wells are available, or you take one offline and say my firm capacity is available. And that's basically what this analysis does here, which is to say, you know, theoretically, with the resources that we're talking about, you know, there's some question, even on a day-to-day basis right now, does the existing CalAM system, the way a number of wells have been out of service, you know, has it always been, you know, if you spot check at certain points during the last 4 to 5 years, could it have always met the max daily demand calculation under the law? I don't know. There's some question. With the desal plant online producing in real time, it should swimmingly be able to meet it. But this analysis in exhibit or in the attachment to the thing was, okay, seems like a lot of the focus has been on Pure Water Monterey expansion's ability to meet this requirement. And then the other appendices were answers to the questions of really basically the urban water management plan, which is how do you do in a normal year, how do you do in a dry year, and how do you do in multiple dry years? And those are the 2 planning tools that are kind of in the law that, you know, water supply planners need to look at.
Okay, any other questions?
One follow-up, please, Dave. The gross up calculations of a 1.5 factor, is that in the recommended, guidelines, the standard industrial guidelines?
No, it's actually in the law, so it's in California codes.
Okay. Yeah, it seemed like it's very conservative, and that's safe, and I appreciate understanding it better. Thank you.
So, Dave, is there any problem of bringing this one back again with what Gary would like to see on it? I would like to see that too. And how would you get this out to the public without a recommendation?
Okay, so I'm a little unclear on what it is that Director Hoffman wanted to see.
Okay, he wanted that adopt, accept, or receive definitions.
Right, correct.
I would like to see that on here myself, what it means, and how would you distribute this out to the public right now? How would the public pick this up?
Right, so yeah, I do think, and I'll ask Dave Laredo, who's on the phone, to work with me as well as to what the nuances are between adopt, approve, and accept. So yes, we can bring it back for that. And as you well know, we're probably not going to have a public meeting in May either, the way things are going. So we've got a little bit of time. So yeah, we can work on that.
Dave,
Okay.
Actually, one additional aspect is the concept of just the board or the committee acknowledging completion and filing the report in the district's files.
Right. Which, you know, we've had a lot of discussion. You know, it was interesting that the fallout in September, October was, oh, the board never approved it. Yet we do technical memoranda all the time and informational reports and annual well data reports that you receive. And receiving and accepting is normal course of the business. Well, shoot, some of those reports have then been memorialized in environmental impact reports and in tables that have been lifted into other official reports. And so the practical effect of a staff memorandum is the data is there, we've compiled it, we've tested the rigors of, you know, what's presented, and you could throw it in a drawer or throw it in a file or whatever, and then it doesn't mean anything different. And so I think it's really kind of at the board level to decide what word you want to put on it. At the staff level, you know, I'll be honest with you, we're tired of futzing with it. Yeah, and that means me mostly. But this, you know, this was a request of the board chair last year, and there was reason to look at it. You know, there were new data points, 3 years worth of new data. The fact that the PUC never did their own original analysis, you know, there was a reason for the question being asked, and some of the learnings were really interesting, but they simply are what they are at this point. And so you're right, Director Hoffman, you could just, you know, put it in a drawer. It is complete, it's done, and it exists. To answer Director Edwards' other question is, how does it become public? By being in this packet at this point, it's public, even though it was sent to you individually and the city managers individually previously. This is the first time that it's a public document. So it's now accessible to the public.
Right, and that's why I would like the public to get their hands on it. I don't know if you can make any more changes once it's out there. But if we approve it or accept it or whatever we do, that means it's being stamped today, and that means you can't make any changes.
I will confess to not wanting to make any changes.
Well, I want to make sure that you don't have to, so I like to carry this one on to next month's meeting, and then until we can come up with a platform that we can get the public and everybody on the connection, I feel more comfortable. I don't feel comfortable doing this today, approving this or moving it along. And I know the public, I don't want to be blamed about doing something behind their back, even though this is not a Brown committee. So we could probably do it, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with it.
Right.
I'd like to comment. I have looked up the definitions of the three words, approve, adopt, and accept. I feel like the standard government action on official things are adopt, and the less formal approvals, they're not less legal, but they're a little less formal about accepting or approving. So I like the recommendation for adopt. I think that ought to stay in the language that this report represents, and it ought to be presented to the public that way, and ought to be presented to the full the board that way. And if it becomes an issue later, then let it become an issue. But right now, I think the issue, this is such an important document all the way across every aspect of water and all our relationships with all the other water agencies and the regulatory agencies, the PUC and others. This is such a critical document because it represents a local viewpoint, professionally developed, completely analyzed, and fully presented in a very clear manner, the picture that the district is facing and the peninsula is facing. And I see nothing wrong with making this the kind of report that I think it is. Fundamental groundwork for everybody's consideration. So And I don't know what other changes could be made. I only have one thing I wanted to verify with Dave before we finish this discussion. But that's my opinion about the word adopt and then the nature of this report in general.
So this is Director Hoffman. The comment that I would make is that my goal is that ultimately whatever action the board takes, that it's clear what the ultimate use of this document can and cannot be in the future. If the intent ultimately is for the board to adopt a policy that, or to consider adopting a policy that's reflective of the information in this document, that's one thing, then let's make that abundantly clear. So all I'm saying is that the use of terminology should not be to the discretion of the reader. It should be straightforward and obvious. And that's really what I'm getting at, is that let's not mess around with semantics. Let's make it clear what the whole purpose of this document is, and have a serious discussion about the validity of the report.
Well, I agree with both of you the way it is, and that's why I'm not ready to make a decision this month on it. I like to see it out in the public. I like to see those other things put on there, and then, hey, if anything willing, we can have a meeting where we get everybody involved in it and find a platform where we get everybody involved in it before we make a big decision. And I don't want to make a decision and the people going to think we did it behind their back. Well, we've been open publicly to them for since I've been on the board. And I count the 10 years back when Molly Erickson and them made everything Brown Act. So I'm just not ready to make a decision today until we get all that information.
Well, I think before you go out for public comment, at some point, if you want to, this committee is going to recommend it up to the board, or it can actually, as I said, die at this committee level too. If you decide not to make any recommendation, irrespective of the semantics and which word is chosen. The recommendation here was my read on what was requested, which is finish the thing and take it up to the board. You can certainly come back in a month and then decide to take it up to the board, but it's out of my hands in terms of providing direction on what can be done. I think Director Hoffman's words were chosen very well about being very, very clear about what it is you're trying to accomplish here. And, as I said, I was asked to analyze some things, put it together. It got an interesting series of reactions. It's going to continue to be utilized by others for others to make certain points in the public. But yeah, our board needs to decide. So you could either make a recommendation to take it to the board at its first earliest board meeting, or make a recommendation to just bring it back to this committee again. But at some point, you're going to have to decide whether you want to take any action on it or just let it exist.
Well, I feel we're going to take some action on it, but I just want a platform where everybody knows that this is going to happen, and I just feel more comfortable for that. So I want to see it brought back next month, and I hope things change, that we can probably put this on the agenda and the full board can meet on it. And I hope, 6 feet apart, that we can do it at a meeting. So I'm probably looking at putting this on the agenda in July, if anything. I'll give you a date in a July meeting. So they give May and June for it to be out there, and everybody, and we can get a platform that we can have a good meeting.
Riley here. Alvin, I'm a little bothered by that schedule. It seems to me it kicks too many cans down the road. I'm agreeing with Dave. I don't know what else can be done to this report to add anything to it. So the report basically stands on its own. I think, Gary, your comment about what's going to be done with this report and whether it represents policy or whatever, until those questions get formed, until those opportunities present themselves, until alternatives kind of come to the board in some fashion, I think you're trying to preempt how it might be useful, not necessarily, changed, but how it might be used and useful. I'm looking for a little shorter time frame, Chairman Edwards, if possible, because I think the discussion so far has been, if we cannot get another regular board meeting where we can all sit in the same room until maybe May, then we maybe should have that discussion, final action at that kind of meeting. That could be in May, not July. So I would hope that would still be an option. And I still have a technical question to ask before we close out this discussion.
Okay, I don't mind if May is next month, and that give us some time to put together some kind of platform where we can have a good meeting. So we ask your question.
Dave, can I go to page 49 on the agenda in your report? It has to do with tourism bounce back. You don't need to go to that page necessarily, but this concerns tourism bounce back. I know you have asked the tourism industry for data. They have not provided any data. You've presented two facts in your report, one from 2016, which suggests a bounce back of, I'm not sure, 62%, I think. I'm not sure which is, no, I'm sorry, that's Norici's report from some time ago. That was, I'm sure, that was after the, financial.
Yeah, no, yeah. So what
let me get to the one point I want to make though.
Yeah.
Hotel, which is sentence, the hotel occupancy locally is back at approximately 72% and is estimated by the Smith Travel Research to be higher in the Monterey Peninsula. There are two footnotes related to that sentence. One is from 2016, the other is from 2019. The question I want to ask and the point I want to make is that as many times as you ask the tourism industry, hospitality, to provide you with any updated information, is it true to say that they have not provided you with any information as a result of your request?
No, it's not true. We've been working very cooperatively on the American Tin Cannery project. And we also have been working with that developer on their use of innovative technology to kind of stay within the envelope of water that's available with on-site credit. And as a result of that, we've received some relatively, decent recent information on hotel occupancy.
Okay, so it does represent, all right. Right.
Yeah.
And you do, the following sentence says, well, never mind. Okay, that was the clarification. I didn't know whether we were depending on 2016 and 2019 or whether there's some 2020 data or perspectives more recent than January 2019. And you said there is.
And 2020 data is going to be completely opposite because of the situation we're in with COVID-19.
Sure. I understand that.
Yeah.
So I have a question, George. You made a reference that this is so important and it's got to be done quickly. But I'm thinking there's no policy issue in front of the board that I'm aware of upcoming to where any decision on adopting this report means anything. So I'm just kind of wondering what critical business of the district is impacted by this analysis.
My perspective is that it filters into so many other things. The discussion with the State Water Board on one of the agenda items here, it just establishes the data baseline for so much of what's going on in the peninsula, and it's relevant to that. Condition 2, it's relevant to that. Metering, additional metering, I think it's relevant to that. It's relevant to what am I thinking of? Coastal Commission hearing that may be coming up, and who knows when that is coming up, when. And this kind of key information for what they're concerned about is both supply and demand. What this does, I think, is say to the public that our general manager has looked at all these issues, formed various relationships to the data points, and come to some conclusion about what the sizing issue is, the demand issue is for the near-term future. And the near term is running 20 to 40 years. So it seems to me it is, I don't say it's policy, because planning tools are planning tools. But to consider this a planning tool, consider this a basic understanding of the local water issues, and declaring it a formal report by the district. And I think that's where I'm coming from. The district should be standing behind the data, the report, the cycle of reviews that have taken place since last September, the various comparison baselines that have been included in this report now that were not included the first time. I don't know how many more ways you can make the point that the desal plan proposed by Cal-Am is oversized. And there are various pieces of information in here that's very relevant to the backup to Cal-Am's desal. So to say that we don't know where there's a policy relationship of this report to other things going on, Christ, I can even send the Los Padres Dam report would have some interest in where what's in here too. I just think there are a lot of places, and it's not formally related to a policy position of the district, but it is definitely related to actions of the district that the district has been involved in for years.
So just to follow up, you mentioned the Coastal Commission. We're not a party to any action at the Coastal Commission, so I'm at a loss to get the connection with what's going on. That's between the applicant and the agency, and we are not the applicant. And so that's where I'm coming from.
Well, from my point of view, the Coastal Commission did ask for other data related to demand issues early on in the process. And if this report is responsive to that, it was in September. People had a lot of problems with the September report. A lot of us did. But that request is still there. Coastal Commission still hasn't acted. This is data that would be relevant to their consideration. We're in the water business. We're not trying to hide from any responsibility or any other agency. We should be proud of what we're doing, defend what we're doing, and promote what we're doing. And that's my position.
Well, just in closing on this item, it was a snapshot. Now I consider it a vital report for all the work the general manager put in, all the research the general manager put in. And I just want to make sure that the public is aware of that and the decision that we're about to make, even at this committee, even at the board level. That's why I just want to feel comfortable with everybody know it's out there. A decision is going to be made, maybe in May. But right now, Cal-Am and the coast, I don't know who's having a meeting, but I want a good meeting on this item. So I just don't want to run it back. Any public comment on this? See, I don't know if there's any public out there. I don't know, but we need to come up with a platform where we know where everybody at, Cal-Am is on this, so they have any objections or whatever, they could put them out, since they did a report themselves. So I said we bring it back next month.
Chair, Riley here again. You might just wait a pause a few extra moments, because if there's a public out there that wants to speak, they have to get to their computer and find their little blip point and click off mute, and it takes a few moments. That's all.
Okay, I'll pause for a few more minutes to let the public chime in, but this will be on the agenda next month, and I hope we can reach all of them. If it's using Zoom, let's go with it.
Yes, and any members of the public on this phone line that wish to speak or make comment, please identify yourselves. And Stephanie, as the WebEx master, are you seeing anybody raising a hand on WebEx?
I couldn't even connect to that. Okay, so we'll bring this one back next month, like we do another one, to find out what we can do, and I hope we work on our meetings a little bit better than this. Any
These
other
are
comments?
challenging times.
I know it, but hey, you gotta step it up. Any other comments?
It's a learning process. So, we're all winging it. So.
I know it, Gary. Go ahead.
Yeah. So here's the funny thing. So after I've discovered that my OS on my Mac remote desktop can't connect, and then I discovered it can't connect to WebEx, I'm like, well, I'll just go grab one of the district laptops. Well, they've all gone missing, not missing, we know where they are, but they're in hands of everybody who's working remotely. So the GM can't even just stroll into his own building and pick up a district laptop. And I can't go down to a store and buy one because the stores are all closed. I'm like, huh, who thought this one through?
Well, I hope we're working on something for all board members, because what I went through today, just trying to get this, I didn't like it one bit.
Yeah, we've got one Apple iPad that actually has Verizon access that we're experimenting with that would allow you to call in. So the whole issue, of course, is not just giving you a device, but it's making sure that you can connect to the internet.
Right.
So if you don't have, if you don't have a cable modem at home that you are wirelessly connecting to or something like that, or if you're traveling and, you just need to connect to a hotel, whatever, you have to have connectivity. And so you can't have a dumb machine. You have to have a smarter machine. And we're playing with those.
Well, I'm using a hotspot.
Yeah.
I'm just using my hotspot. So we need to come up with something that can work.
Just for information purposes, I think I signed in twice, and that was the feedback. I had two mics activated on the screen, and when I finally figured that out.
Problem, George.
Okay.
Hey, the thing is, why don't, back, GoToMeeting, I don't know that the functionality is workable, but that's kind of a proven technology. I don't know if that can be, used in this context or not.
It can. I did a GoToMeeting meeting last week, and they screwed it up worse than we have. So I think that, there's all the same issues. Microsoft just released their new Teams, which is, the same type of thing. It appears, despite the flaws, and Director Hoffman, I forwarded you a report from the BBC about the issue that you raised. Everybody's just fallen in love with Zoom. We've got friends having Zoom get-togethers while they're all shuttered in place. But so like in my situation at work, I don't have a camera or a microphone in my monitor. At home, I've got both in my machine, but I don't have the OS. And so sorting through all of these little nuances, when people call in you don't have control over their identity, but when they log in on the computer, you do. And so when you offer both
the
options,
other problem,
yeah, go ahead.
the other problem is when members of the public is controlling them and making certain that they speak when it's their opportunity, but not at otherwise. Also controlling what type of images are displayed by members of the public. It's not like it's totally a cooperative meeting such as a staff meeting, but when you when you open it up to the members of the public and all you have is a phone number that you see and not any ID, it's possible to get them, have the meeting be hijacked by somebody as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all issues that, this is a learning process that we're all figuring out. So appreciate all the work, Dave, that you're doing, and Stephanie, and to try to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
appreciate it too. And we got critical items coming up, so we need to make sure that we can put it out there and probably don't think we trying to slide it behind their back.
Yeah.
Do anybody want to put anything?
I was just going to
Do
say, I
anybody
guarantee
want to put
next
anything
time
on for?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I guarantee next time your meeting will be run on the video and computer end much better. This was my first attempt.
Okay. Do anybody want to add anything to a future agenda?
I'd like to raise two questions. One is, Dave, is a return water agreement analysis, is that so complicated that it could not be done next time, or at least within the next 2 months, maybe?
Well, I mean, there's two pieces to that, Director Riley. One is just an understanding what the return water agreement says. That's very doable. An analysis, you know, I don't think we can connect the agreement to the actual production of you know, of water. You know, I think in the EIR there was 3%, 5%, 7%, 9%, or something like that,
Right.
analyzed, but no one knows what the real percentage of fresh groundwater is really going to be in the desal plant. So, trying to, you know, make some statements as to, well, okay, there's going to be X amount at this rate to Castroville Community Services District, and then there's going to be beyond that they'll pay an additional amount for, and then there's also an amount that they can't use. It's going to go over to the CSIP, but it can only go over to the CSIP during the summer months. And I mean, we can do some what-if analysis, absolutely, but just discussing what it is and what the, you know, I know part of what you're asking is what's the actual cost to produce the water versus the revenue received for the sale of the water. I know that's part of it, and we can certainly do that part.
Well, maybe Dave, what I'll just meet with you sometime, or we'll talk about it, and I'll go through a bunch of my questions and see how they might, because it's more of the implication of the agreement, not just the description in the return water agreement. So I'm looking at more of the implications, but I think I'll just kind of free float this idea with you a little bit and see where it might go and see what it might end up in a report or not. I don't know. But we can do this offline. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll say the meeting is adjourned. Go ahead.
No, hey, Alvin, wait a second. Wait a
All
second.
right. All right.
I'm just going to be the squeaky wheel in the sense that at the last meeting, I brought up as an agenda item for consideration non-CalAM pumpers out of the Carmel River and conservation, an enhanced conservation program, or at least addressing that. So again, I'm just following up and keeping the bug in the ear about that being an agenda item.
Sound
Yeah,
good. When can we get that done?
Well, we actually have that on the list. And it's timely because right now on the April board agenda are 2 reports, which are reports about all of the pumpers in our well registry. And so that's where you can get a good sense of who the non-CalAm pumpers are and who the CalAm pumpers are and what the difference is. So, we update that data annually. So this is a good point then to lock in on that data here in April, and then in, May, June, start to address it. So I think, and it's on a list of things. Don't think, Director Hoffman, we just, wrote it off. We put it on the list of things that we knew that you wanted to come back to.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Appreciate that. I just see that being a real opportunity to some low-hanging fruit.
Yep. Yeah, and we just got another inquiry about forbearance agreements and what the possibilities might be, and that goes to similar to Rancho Cañada Golf Course and the nice work that CalAm did in helping fund that purchase by recognizing that you can get credit for 3.5 years of forbearing the pumping. Some folks have now asked a similar question about other non-CalAm pumpers and what impact that might have. And so, I think it's all kind of coming together at the same time.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions before I close it? Okay, meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
Again, thanks for the work on the technology. I know it's a tough situation, and best of luck.
And thanks,
Thank you.
and thanks for your tolerance.
All right,
All right,
thanks all.
we just got to make it better. Have a good night.
All right.